back to the AusCannaPodcast, where we dive deep into the world of Australian medicinal cannabis with the people shaping the industry. I'm your host, Christina McMullen, and today's guest is someone with a fascinating journey into this space. Sacha La Forgia is the co-founder of Golden Days Cultivators. But before stepping into the world of cannabis, Sacha was already a force to be reckoned with. An award-winning grape grower, winemaker, and distiller. Now he's applying that deep-rooted passion for quality to the world of medicinal cannabis. In this episode, we'll unpack how his background influences his approach to cultivation, what makes Golden Days different, and their dedication to quality at the entry level. But first, you know how we do things around here. We're kicking it off with some rapid fire questions to get to know Sacha a little bit better. So grab your favorite cultivar, load up your dry herb vaporizer, and get comfortable. Because here we go. Okay, you ready, Sacha? Here we go.
Okay.
What's your favorite terpene and why?
Oh, yeah, okay. It would have to be pinene, only because that's the one that I have the most experience with. So this is rapid fire, but I'll give you the long answer.
No, I like it. I like it. Go for it.
My job before this was a distiller, and I was making craft gin, and really that was all I was doing was extracting terpenes. That's what flavors gin. That's what flavors cannabis, as we know. And the most important ingredient in gin is juniper, and the most common terpene in juniper is pinene. So I have a bit of a soft spot for pinene.
I'm gonna let that slide because it all circles back. So I'm gonna let it slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now I'm gonna do, if you had to create a cannabis infused cocktail, what would it be?
That's so hard because okay, I'm just going to do the rapid fire mojito.
Now I want to know why, because you definitely started to think on why. Why?
Okay, so like for me, alcohol on cocktails, it's not about the cocktail, it's the moment in time. So it's where you are, it's who you're with, it's what you're doing. And all the cocktail is doing is bringing you together, if that makes sense. I feel in legal markets that I've been in, cannabis is the same. So for me, right, mojito is like afternoons at the beach or at the pool with my friends, having a golden day.
What's one smell that immediately takes you back to your childhood?
God, is so weird, but old furniture.
Like, okay, no, keep going. Explain.
So I don't know. I think everyone in their grandma's house had old wooden furniture, and it's this smell of like varnish and wood, and a little bit of mothballs. And for me, that just takes me straight back to being like the smallest child I can remember at my grandma's house, playing with my cousins and hanging out.
You know, it's weird because now that you've described it, yeah, I'm right there with you. I
Yeah.
would have never thought of that on my own. But like I said, now that you've said it, I'm like, that is a very distinct, like, we don't really do that anymore. It's because all of our stuff is IKEA.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Nobody's polishing the furniture anymore.
Yeah. There's not like generations of bums on couches.
It's very true.
Yeah.
If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
Um, maybe. Oh, that's a good question. Um, so there's a few that come to mind. But I'm going to say Road Tripping by Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Ooh, fabulous song.
Mm, I like that. I think that I like the vibe of the song, you know, going on an adventure with your friends. I think that
Who are your
is what I've
two
tried to do.
who are your two favorite allies?
Ah, um, oh, that's okay. God.
Not rapid fire at all, but now I've
Yeah.
detoured. And if you know the song, then I had to ask.
Um, okay, so I'm going to say it's difficult because when I was doing winemaking, I worked overseas a lot, and I stayed in a country for like 3 to 6 months at a time, and I did lots of adventures with lots of different people. But there's one guy I'm really good friends with, Sam. He lives in California, just north of Los Angeles. Um, we did a trip around Tasmania in an old van that didn't work very well. So he'd be one for sure because he's like real fun and quirky and loves good puns. Um, oh, God, I can't believe anything of this. First, Ewan, my business partner, every day of the week.
Good recovery, good recovery.
Yeah, yeah. So Ewan and Sam, I'll take them. Oh, and oh God, now I'm or my partner Ariana and our daughter.
You got a back seat. It's okay. It's okay. You can fit
Yeah,
them all in.
yeah.
Like I said, it was a side question only because I love that song too. It's a great song. It has a fabulous vibe to it. We'll definitely have to drop it in the show
Totally.
notes. Um,
Yeah.
you said you had another song though that came to mind before I cut you off for my sidetrack.
Oh, I was just thinking something along the lines of like, I don't know, Daft Punk or actually the first one I thought of, but I thought it wasn't very humble, was the Rocky theme song.
See, now I wish I was doing video because I almost want to make you get up and do
Yeah.
dance at the top of the stairs.
Yeah. The training montage.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
yeah, doing a montage of starting a cannabis facility is probably like Rocky versus the Russian or something. It's a lot more difficult.
Little Eye of the Tiger action. No, I love it. I love it. What's the best lesson you've learned from failure?
um, Probably the preference is not to fail, I think is the lesson. um, no, shit, so much. I guess, oh, look, the obvious one is, failure is just part of the process. Um, and it's not the end, it's just a different direction. Um, I think that's probably it. Like, um, you always fail. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not necessarily failure. It's a change in direction. So it's just showing you that the track you were on wasn't the right one. And I think you just need to have the ability to see the opportunities. So, for example, if you don't try, you won't fail, and that's very safe. But you won't learn anything along the way, and it's the lessons that you learn along the way that inform your next decision or your next attempt. And often, it's a lot better than what you were doing.
No, I think that's golden advice. I think that's great.
Okay, cool.
What's a small daily habit that has made a big difference in your life?
mm. I'm trying to think of what I do every day. Um, I think one of the biggest changes in my life recently is just trying to achieve a bit better work-life balance. Um, so I think it's just making, um, like, especially coming out of doing the distillery, It was really intense because we were very young, didn't have any experience, didn't have any money. It was like all on me. Super intense, and I sacrificed a lot to get through that. Now that I'm out of it, I really appreciate um, time with others, my health, all that sort of stuff. So I think maybe the habit is making a point of turning off, not being, um, not feeling like I have to be at work or I have to do this, have to do that. It's actually being the other way and being like, I have to find time for myself. I think that's probably the best thing I've done recently.
I think that's something that we all struggle with, though, right? That
Mm,
work-life balance, especially now in the age of, I like to call it the electronic leash. You know, you're accessible almost 24/7, and then when you don't respond to somebody, you almost feel bad about it, even if
yeah,
you have something legitimate going on and you were legitimately busy, you still feel bad that you didn't respond to them instantaneously when they messaged you, emailed you, called you, texted you, or whatever. Yeah, no, I think
totally.
it's definitely something I struggle with, so I assume other people do.
Yeah, cut the leash.
Yeah, like I said, I do. I call it the electronic leash for sure.
Yeah.
Um, what's your biggest pet peeve?
Um, I don't know. I like to think I'm fairly understanding. Um, Ewan might disagree with that statement. Uh, the biggest pet peeve. Something that I can't get my head around is that we're in the year 2025 and shoelaces are still the best way of doing up your shoes. Do you, like shoes have been around for hundreds of years and they've always had laces. Surely someone can just sort it out for us.
They're
Sorry, shoelaces, I
Velcro.
guess.
I love it. They're Velcro shoes, though. Like,
Nothing work. Not yeah. So that all that stuff exists. Nothing works as well as shoelaces. Um.
is it the cinch
So
factor, you think? Because you can cinch in a shoelace, so your shoe is always tight, whereas, like slip-ons, they kind of just stretch out and they lose their, as you
yeah,
said,
like the
cinches.
laces. The laces kind of conform to your foot, I guess, and it's better. But I feel in the modern age of materials and science, like there must be something out there. I just can't believe that they still exist. It blows my mind.
I've never really put a lot of thought into it, but now that you've said it, I'm like, I'm with you. Shoelaces, you think we'd make advances on that on some level? Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess in the morning when I tie up my shoes, I think, oh, I wish I had this 10 seconds back in my life or something.
Okay. Okay, so last question. What's something you've done that scared you but was totally worth it?
um, Lots of things. Um, oh, look, just coming on today is scary. Um, I mentioned that before we started. It's a new industry for me. I'm trying to transfer all my skills over, and we're trying to be. Our goal is to become one of the world's best cultivators, which is a big call from people who haven't grown up in the cannabis industry. So coming on a show like this, which has fairly large listenership, and kind of trying to talk about it is scary. But I think it's a good thing. So
It's all about facing your fears, man.
yeah, that and skydiving.
I like the fact that you're comparing coming on my show to skydiving because skydiving scares the shit
Yeah.
out of me. But okay.
Mm, yeah.
Okay, I like it. I like it, Sasha. I like it a lot, actually. You know what? Maybe when you win your first cannabis award, we'll go skydiving together to celebrate.
Ah, I like it. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
can. We can tandem each other.
Yeah. Okay. I like
So
it.
like,
I like it.
we'll just
'Cause
we'll just jump out, and one of us will have to do a parachute.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, Sasha, for the listeners who don't know anything about you, do you mind giving us a brief introduction?
Sure. So I grew up in Adelaide. Um, the wine industry in South Australia is extremely strong. We make 70% of Australia's premium wine. And I grew up in a Italian family. Dad is Italian, so we grew up making wine. When I left school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to travel and have fun. And there's a winemaking degree here in Adelaide, so I studied viticulture and winemaking. Um, Pretty quickly realized that I didn't enjoy sitting in a room staring at a wall all day. So I went traveling, and I spent 6 years bouncing around the world doing wine vintages, going from Northern Hemisphere to Southern Hemisphere because you follow the sort of summer season. Um, but I was very lucky because my first ever vintage was in Canada in 2008. And cannabis was already medical over there at that point. So I sort of was around some of the conversations and had a bit of an epiphany moment where I learned that cannabis wasn't this evil drug. It was actually a medicine. Um, and it was a medicine that was incredibly useful um, in many areas of life. Anyway, so I kept traveling. I was in California for a vintage as well. I did 14 vintages in 7 countries in that time. Kept progressing through my career. Nearly every year I was in North America. I made heaps of great friends there, so I loved going there. And I saw those legal markets opening up. Then I was working in Germany. One of my best friends from high school was also in Germany. His cousin had a grappa distillery in Italy, so we went down there for a grappa season. And the guy that owned the distillery had just sort of said to us, guys, why don't you just go start your own distillery? And we thought, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So that was, at the start of it. That was in 2014, I think. So look, that was what we did. We started a distillery in the Adelaide Hills. We were both, mid-20s, no money because we'd both been traveling for ages. Probably naive enough to think that we could do it, if that makes sense. So we tried. Unfortunately for us, it was really good timing for the industry. It hadn't really kicked off in Australia yet, but it was about to. And we'd seen it happening overseas, so we had a level of confidence. So yeah, we did that. We started a story called 78 Degrees. We started really small, grew with the market. As I said, we didn't have any money, so we just focused on quality, tried to make the best product that we could. We ended up, we won heaps of awards. So World's Best Whiskey, we won in 2019, World's Best Gin in 2017, Distiller of the Year in London in 2020, and some other awards, and then it was, I guess, a funny one. Like, as I sort of progressed through that industry and got older and saw more happening, I started to understand that there were downsides for health associated with alcohol, to say the least. So for a number of years, I started to feel a bit concerned about what I was doing, the products I was putting out. I think there's kind of a mismatch between, what people view alcohol as and what it really is. So it has a real level of status, and it feels very special, but in reality, it's just a drink, and it's, depending on what you buy, it's 14 or 15% poison. And so it's like, anyway, so I started to feel really uncomfortable about making money off that, or drawing, being paid a salary. from something that is doing that sort of stuff to society. So I guess I started looking for something new. At the same time, so you and my business partner was a brewer at Mismatch Brewing. He sort of similar to me, he built a brewery up from very, very small to one of the largest in South Australia and a significant size on a national point of view. And we built a facility together in the Adelaide Hills where we shared a roof. So we actually worked like we were next to each other for like 8 years. But it was an interesting relationship because we were separate businesses in the same place. So we had to sort of respectfully navigate a kind of competitive relationship. So there's a lot of challenges that came up. But we just would sit down and talk and sort it out. And it was really easy.
I see why you picked him as one of your road trip buddies.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Like I don't know, we get on really well, and we never. It's just we both want to see each other win and do well. Anyway, so in 2016, when it was legalized, the medical in Australia, Ewan was super passionate about the industry, and before that as well. But obviously, once it was legalized for medical, it was a lot more clear where it was going. So he used to talk about it all the time, and that was the future. And people used to laugh at him because they were like, "Dude, it's never going to happen. Like, you're cooked." But because I'd spent so long in North America, I was just always like, "Dude, you're spot on. You're absolutely right." So we both left those jobs at the same time, and we went straight into looking at the medicinal cannabis industry. So around 2020, we started looking at it properly, and then it's slowly progressed from there. Now we're just waiting for our final permit to come through, and we can start to grow. But we've built a fully indoor, vertically farmed facility down here. We've done it really carefully with a focus on quality. So we're spending money where we have to, but we're not overspending or trying not to. But everything we do is just trying to be. We want to be one of the world's best cultivators from a quality point of view. We think the only way to put patients first is to give them the best quality consistently every time. And that's really what drives us.
What do you think's been the biggest lesson from like the wine industry that you've applied coming over to the cannabis industry?
So there's a bit. I think getting to the stage where we are now, because we excuse me, because we built a brewery and a distillery. That experience of building manufacturing facilities, we learned a lot. We understand now where the pain points are and where you can save money and where you shouldn't save money, because if it doesn't work properly, that's really bad. At the same time, if it works but it doesn't produce quality, that's really bad too. Or for us, that's not what we want. So just understanding how the world works in that way has been huge. But then the biggest thing for me that comes from the alcohol industry generally is just the focus on quality. So if you think about any alcoholic product, it's the flavor, aroma, and the chemical composition of the product is really important. And it gets studied. Everything is studied like to the most minute detail. And then it produces people that you could give someone, a winemaker, a glass of wine, and they'll smell it and they'll go, you had a problem with this one thing 3 months ago or whatever. Because they know, I can smell this one compound and that's caused by this, and to fix it, you have to do this. Um, and that's, I think, a really powerful skill because when you're producing things um, that are reliant on flavor, aroma, chemical composition, you need to be able to assess the flavor, the aroma, and you need to be able to um, understand what it means and how to change it. And it's that, I mean, that's the whole, if you're in a role in the alcohol industry where you make it, that's what your job is. That's what separates, a new winemaker to a senior winemaker is the ability to smell and taste and make decisions based on that. Um, and that is really important for quality.
I definitely think that there are similarities in the way like fine wines are appreciated and the way high quality cannabis can be appreciated. Um, do you think that if cannabis was treated more like fine wine, do you think it would change the way it was like sold and understood?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Yeah, because like, firstly, if you're trying to understand something new, the easiest way is to associate it to something that you already know. And we all know, a lot of people know already a bit about wine and beer and whatever. So you can go, hey, like if you get this wine, it smells like this, and you get that, cannabis is the same. And it is very much a something to be appreciated. We're very lucky to have this plant. Um, it's evolved with us. It, you know, we make our own cannabinoids. The plant makes its cannabinoids. It's like a little health pack. It's like we're just super lucky to have it with us, and it should be appreciated. And people, we should take the time to acknowledge how lucky we are and just enjoy it.
I definitely think that if we could draw back on something that's more similar, that's something that culture already appreciated, and we drew the similarities and we could be like, hey, this is somewhat similar. I think I think it would be better understood. I think more people would be willing to embrace it. What are some of so okay, I don't even know where to start with with Golden Days. So was this just like a conversation that you had with Ewan where you were just like, let's do this. I think we can do this? Because you were saying he kind of I don't want to be like he was the crazy one. That's not what you said at all. But he was the one that was like, I think this is going to be something. And because you had, traveled the world, you'd seen it in a couple other places, you were like, yeah, maybe it is. Was it just him with his crazy idea and you guys just because you mesh so well together? Was that just you were like yeah, let's do this? Was that just kind of how it went?
Pretty much, yeah, yeah. So I mean, we'd spoken about it for years before we started properly looking at it. Um, just because we weren't in a position to really do it until we were. Um, we'd investigated other, like we'd thought about doing like a functional beverage that incorporated CBD and stuff like that, but we didn't really find anything that we thought we actually wanted to spend the next 10 years or more of our lives like fully focused on. Um, so we just slowly worked through it until we found what we thought was right. And back then, pre 2020, um, having a grow facility was like you couldn't really imagine how that could happen for just a couple of somewhat normal people. Like it was it felt like you needed lots of money, like proper money, and just it they're all so that wasn't the first thing we thought of because it seemed like just a dream that probably wasn't going to happen. Um, but then as we progressed and we spent more time talking to people and understanding how it can come together and going to California and getting into the indoor facilities there, and we learned you can do it on a more achievable budget. It's still quite expensive, but you don't need the millions and millions of, we thought you did. Um, you just need the time. So, um, like we've saved a lot of money by doing all the work ourselves. And yeah, taking the time to go through and understand, in a commercial environment, what's critical for success and what isn't. And then, if it's not critical, well, we don't need it. If it is, how can we achieve the same quality for a lower initial investment? And just working through it. And then that was how we came to Golden Days. That was the
Um, are there any specific cultivation techniques that you swear by that you guys are trying to incorporate in?
oh look, we we are, pretty proud to be indoor. Um, what we've seen overseas and in Australia as well, environment is probably the most important thing. In my view, I think you really need to control your environment. And again, we're going for the best quality possible and consistently. So by managing our environment, we manage our quality and our consistency. And it might be our backgrounds as well. Like growing grapes is the same. That was always the struggle. Growing grapes was like trying to look at the weather coming up and then manage the canopy to suit it. So, for example, if summer's been quite cold, you go through and rip out a bunch of leaves to get a bit more sun into the bunches so it ripens up a bit better, you get more flavor. But then you get a heat wave and it burns all the grapes and you lose half your crop. So it was like, it's always about controlling the environment as much as you can. And the same in brewing and distilling. It's controlling everything, every variable, in a way that allows you to consistently achieve the best quality over and over. So when we look at cannabis and speaking to experts, it always seems to come back to environmental control. And we've been really lucky. The guys at Wangara Cultivation in Queensland, Luke and Ethan, and Maddie Dent, Alex and Ben, they've been we've known them now for a number of years and very very happy to call them friends and maybe even mentors. They've taught us so much, and are really assisting us to make sure we don't make any mistakes.
Um, what defines like top shelf or quality cannabis in your opinion?
Yeah, it can be subjective, can't it?
It's highly subjective. It's highly subjective.
Yeah. Look, I think, and I will say before I say this, in the same way with alcohol, like people used to ask me that actually quite a lot, like, what's the best gin or what's the best wine? And I would always say the best drink is the one that you like. So that's that's the most important thing is the one that you like is the best one. And then in my personal opinion, I think, so firstly, we're in Australia, we're in a medical market. So satisfying all of the GMP, TGO93, all of the analysis, I think that's the minimum standard. So you have to do all that. And then you get into more of the subjective sort of stuff, which is flavor, aroma, and the chemical composition, and how does it therapeutically, how does it make you feel? What's the therapeutic benefit? Which all that leads into should be super fresh, high terpene, high flavonoid, high thiol, whatever it is, like whatever you're chasing in terms of flavor and aroma, and you should have lots of it. and then a good cannabinoid profile, which coupled with the other compounds gives you the feeling, I guess, the therapeutic benefit. I often kind of think like cannabis is kind of medicinal cannabis is kind of like four-dimensional wine in a way, because it has, you know, flavor, aroma, chemical composition, but then also what's the therapeutic benefit, or how does it make you feel? What does it do to you? Which is a really interesting kind of thing to play around with, because in other, you know, so far in my career it's been an alcohol, and that's been flavor, aroma, chemical composition, but the feeling is generally fairly standard across products. I think that's really interesting in cannabis, and something that I'm quite excited about is, you know, what are all those other things and what do they do?
Cannabis has a lot of subtle nuances, right? A lot. And y you just think it's couch locking because you've never had a flower that made you feel otherwise, is what I say to people, right? Um,
Yeah,
and you don't know until you try, kind of, which is a weird thing when you're talking about, medicinal benefits of things and therapeutic outcomes in this, and you're like, you just got to give it a try, because yeah, and I guess that's the other thing that's really like you touched on. It varies from person to person, which is why it is so highly subjective, because it makes me feel one way, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make you feel the same way, which is, I think, one of the things I find so fascinating about it.
totally. Yeah, it's this interconnection of plant and human biochemistry, where you kind of I don't know, it's like if you're it's kind of like dating, right? Like there's a person who looks relatively normal, and someone that I'd enjoy spending time with, and then you go on a date and you're like, actually, it's just not right, you know. And it's the same, and you can't really predict it. All you can do is try. um, I think it's kind of a similar thing where, exactly, you know, you just said it, like it's all different for everyone. And um, it's a really interesting part of the industry, I think.
Yeah, I like having conversations with people, especially when somebody who's really kind of leaned into their preferences or can really understand, what terpene combination works for them. I find that fascinating when somebody can sit there and tell you, "Oh, well, these three terpenes together and they'll make me feel this way, but if you throw this fourth one in, I get loopy," or whatever it is. It's to
Yeah,
me, I'm like, whoa, that's like, how did you figure that out? And ultimately, it does. It all boils down to being a guinea pig and being willing to try, paying attention to all of those subtle nuances, and for the love of God, writing it down so you can remember later.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um, that's the struggle. I think, yeah, you can't pick out the patterns if you don't write it down, because then you won't remember. Or at least, again, I can't speak for everybody, but for myself, if I don't write it down. Um, do you have any thoughts on organic versus non-organic cultivation?
um, I think ultimately, you know, the goal is to be producing the best quality you can in a way that's as kind to the planet as possible. Um, so if you can use fertilizers, or um, if you can add things that have a lower effect on the planet, then I think that's the best thing. If it has an impact on quality, then you should be doing the one that is best for quality, as long as there isn't a, you know, crazy negative issue associated with that. So, you know, like a good example is growing in cocoa versus rockwool. You know, rockwool, people seem to think rockwool is the best substrate, and maybe it is, but also, how do you dispose of that in a sustainable way? So cocoa makes a lot more sense from a holistic point of view. I think there's a lot in the industry. There's a lot of decisions that need to be made like that. For example, we're indoor, so we use a lot of power, which we were uncomfortable about. But we know now that in South Australia, by 2026, 100% of our power will come from renewables. So we feel a lot better about that. So we can deliver, the best quality possible by managing the environment. And yes, we're using a lot of power, but it's coming from wind and solar.
I gotta agree with you in the sense that sustainability is a big area of opportunity in this industry, and I really do wish that more people were into different ways to do it. I think hats off to South Australia for going 100% sustainability here in the next year. That's amazing. Um, and you're right. I think switching to things like the cocoa versus the rock, well, there are little things that can be done along the way to, ease that footprint, so to speak.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting actually. We did, you and I spent quite a bit of time on it. But you can run a really non-sustainable cannabis facility by making, certain choices. Or you can have, really quite a sustainable one. And I'm just talking about indoor now, indoor, by making other choices. And, that's important.
Um, it's probably not a big deal in South Australia, but I'm always curious about water and if you're doing anything special with your water. Is there anything you're doing?
Yeah. I think there's probably Ewan's specialty because his background as a brewer, they they are like super intense about water. So he that was his thing when he was brewing was creating water. So the salts in the water have a particular flavor and a mouthfeel and interactions with other chemicals. So what they would do is they would tailor their water by adding salts to create, the ideal water for certain beers. Um, I think what he was doing was like the classic. I'm not a huge beer nerd, so I might misspeak, but roughly this, like the classic English ale or whatever. They'd recreate the water that they have in the river in England or something to try and make like the perfect beer. Um, and like water's fairly important in spirits as well. So I actually, I remember doing a water tasting where they ran us through all these different waters and the effect on spirits. And it's actually like it's crazy. Just these very small changes make a really noticeable difference. Um, so yeah, look, water's quite important, but I will, that's definitely Ewan's area, and he's doing quite a bit of work on it. But yeah, there's salt composition, and when I don't mean like sodium chloride table salt. It's calcium, magnesium, all the trace elements. They make a big difference.
Things like that fascinate me. I don't know why. I mean, I'm not a brewer, I don't distill, I don't do any of that stuff. But
Yeah,
it fascinates me that like simple little changes like that can dramatically change your outcome. I mean, when I think back to my very I like to call it primitive experiences growing cannabis. I mean, I was pretty advanced when I was using my fish tank water. It's like, ooh, look at me
yeah,
go with my, and now, just having this whole conversation about recreating river waters for my ale, I'm like, yes, there's all of that does play into your final product and, you know, I guess how it tastes and what it looks like and part of whether you enjoy it or not, ultimately.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it has a huge impact on like nutrient availability for the plant and all that sort of stuff. And there's kind of there's not too much flexibility, but it is a really interesting area. I mean, yeah. it is something that would be cool to explore more. Because even in like grape growing, which I always think grape growing is really similar to cannabis growing. But if you could taste in the wine if grapes were grown in a sandy soil versus a clay soil versus a really rocky soil, and yeah, it is a really interesting little tangent to nerd out on.
Australia's got some of the best wines in the world. Do you think our cannabis will ever compete on that level?
Yeah. Oh, mate. I like we're going to be world leaders. 100%. There's no way that we can't be. Um, I'm really passionate about that and quite excited to see where um, Australia goes because we do have like we're still a new industry, right? So we're replicating what's already been done to get to operating, and then I think Australians are very innovative. Um, we're great at doing high quality, and we're great at being different. I think that's what you need to sort of become a world leader. Um, so I'm really excited to see the direction that we take cannabis because, yeah, we'll do it differently for sure.
I think it's a huge opportunity for us. I mean, I've said it on multiple podcasts that we're really good at growing macadamias, wine, beef, all this stuff that the rest of the world just can't get enough of. So why would cannabis be any different in that department?
Totally.
Do you think it'll be small craft cultivators that'll be playing more of a bigger role in kind of shaping the future of the industry?
I would expect that to be the case. I think the smaller ones are a bit more agile, maybe a bit more keen to differentiate. Um, yeah, and plus there's probably a little bit more freedom, in the small ones. Like our facility, for example, Ewan and I are the directors, and we'll be working on the floor. So the decisions can be made really quickly, if that makes sense. And um, we'll be with the cultivators, and we're hiring a director of cultivation. We're looking for someone who has that mindset, really focused on quality, but how do we progress? What's the next thing? Um, has that kind of natural curiosity. I think that is fairly important and doesn't necessarily happen as much in a larger company. I've worked in a I worked in an ASX listed company briefly, and there's just so many layers of management. Decisions go through so many people. They're like, oh, work up a business case and put it to us, and then we'll take it to this person who'll take it to that person. And when really you can just stand around and go, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like that was this? And you go, oh shit, yeah, let's try. Yeah, it's super exciting, and I love we're starting to see more and more smaller people enter the market. It was great at the Cultivators Day at UIC recently. I met all these people starting a little bit smaller than some of the other companies that have started. All people that you kind of want to hang out with and chat to, and so that's awesome because if you can be friends with your competitors, that's when the industry really takes off. Because we're all in it together, and we can help each other. There's plenty of room for everyone. The most important thing is that if we can work together, help each other, then we take over the world, right? There's
Absolutely,
so
we
much,
do.
yeah. There's so much opportunity, and we found the same thing in you and in brewing and myself in spirits. We were really early in spirits, fairly early. We weren't the first, but we were quite early. And I helped people who started after me, and I found I helped them, and then a few years later, when I was struggling with something, they helped me. Yeah, we're all in it together. Let's just be the best we can and make sure Australia is number one.
I love that though. That's great. I totally think that Australia can definitely start producing some of the best cannabis in the world. There's no reason why we can't, for sure. Do you think we'll ever see I mean, we kind of have cannabis cups and things like that, but do you think we'll ever see cannabis on the same level as I'm going to totally screw up this word. I don't even know if this is a word. Connoisseurship? Is that a word? Connoisseurship? S fine wine? That is a word, right? Connoisseurship?
Yeah,
You know what
if
I'm
it
trying to
isn't,
say,
then we'll
right?
just make it. Yeah,
I'm going to say it with
yeah.
confidence. Do you think we'll ever see cannabis on the same level as connoisseurship as fine wine?
um, well, I hope more so. Um, and yeah, I hope a lot more. And more connoisseurs, but appreciators. I think we should appreciate it way more than we do right now for its medical benefit. And I think it should be appreciated just so much more than but wine. Okay, wine's done a lot for us, over however many thousands of years. But I think as a society or a culture, we've probably evolved past needing to lean on wine or any alcohol so much. And cannabis got gotten about over the last 100 years or so, unfortunately. But ultimately, it's such a useful thing, and it changes lives in terms of health and happiness. So I think it should be appreciated. I think it should be there should be connoisseurs. I can't see how we can keep going as a society and not appreciate it so much because it does change lives. Well, my personal experience is that it does. Whether or not, obviously the regulation will either allow or prevent the sort of mass uptake that you see in other markets. If we move to a adult use environment like we see in North America, then I guess that does open it up to be sommeliers and all that sort of stuff and competitions. But even if it doesn't and it stays medical, I'll still be really happy about that.
Um, as far as like consumer education, because I think that that's probably the biggest area of opportunity when it comes to understanding just anything about cannabis, whether it's quality or medicinal effects or, again, anything to do with it. Um, if you could change one policy to improve consumer education, what would it be?
Oh man. Um, I guess you're not allowed to advertise medicines, right? And education is kind of advertising, so you might have to change that one. But also, I don't want to live in a world where I'm constantly being sold medication. So I understand why that law exists, and probably quite happy that it does. Um, yeah, or probably just the big one and just make it legal.
It it does seem like the easy thing to do to just remove that hurdle. Yeah, it's tough, right? Because I definitely think that if patients could access better information, they could definitely make wiser choices with things. It's tough because, like you're saying, you're not allowed to advertise a medicine, but then how do people even know it's there? Or again, how do they even know how to navigate the system and end up at a good clinic with a good doctor versus a sketchy clinic with a locked in contract or whatever it is, if patients can't even have those conversations or don't even know where to go to seek that knowledge to begin that journey.
Yeah, it's fairly opaque coming into the medical market. Again, I understand the reasons why, and fair enough, I suppose. But yeah, you're right. Like you really need to get to a good doctor. Once you find a competent doctor, I think your health journey becomes a lot easier and a lot better.
No, I agree. Well, as soon as you find a good clinic, good doctor, it changes a lot because then you finally find somebody that's actually vested in your therapeutic outcomes and wants to see you achieve those positive outcomes as opposed to what did Paul and I call it? The tick and flick clinic.
Yeah,
Yeah, you don't ever want to be there. Is anything new and exciting coming up for Golden Days?
yeah. Well, so we haven't got our permit yet, but we are very close. So hopefully, very soon we'll be actually growing. But don't want to jinx it. So, yeah, look, I mean, that's the most exciting thing for me, this year is to finally be growing and harvesting, and getting some medicines out there. It's been a really long journey. It's been 3.5 years. We haven't paid ourselves a salary. We've been working full time the whole time. I guess this is getting a bit away from excitement to depression, but it's really difficult. It's crazy. I have so much respect for the people that are actually cultivating already, because it's crazy difficult. So this year is going to be a huge year for us, actually getting plants going and harvesting. And then we hope to be putting out the best quality in the market, which is a big call. I know a lot of people will probably listen to that and go, "Oh, what a bloody dickhead," because it's really hard. But that's our goal. We've done a lot to sort of allow us to achieve that, and now it's just actually doing it, which is the exciting bit and the fun bit.
It is exciting, and I'm excited for you guys. You sound like you're very close, on the cusp of living the dream, as some would say.
Exactly. Living the dream.
I like it though. I mean, look, it's one of those things. You started doing winemaking and distillery. You had a passion for it, but then you realize, hey, this is not necessarily where I want to be. And so you had a partner in crime who was talking over your ear and was like, hey, let's try this, let's do this. And you were like, yeah, you know what? I've been around the world, I've seen some things. This could possibly work. Why not?
Yeah, and a huge driver for you and I touched on it earlier, but health is one thing. But if we can make products that help people, yeah, can't wait to actually put some out.
See, I feel like this is like a perfect spot to end. It's a feel-good spot to end. Oh, Sacha. I like it. We've talked about a lot of things, but I always like to leave the listeners with a takeaway from the conversation. So if you could leave them with one call to action or a nugget of information, what would it be?
I think we kind of covered it. We've touched on it a lot during the conversation, but look, it's all about quality. So people generally, we know what we like. Sometimes we can't describe why we like it or why we don't, but we know if we enjoy something or not. So I'd say if you're not enjoying the medicine that you've been prescribed, go back to your doctor and talk about it. And please ask your doctor to give you something that might suit you better, but has also been grown in Australia, because we've got great cultivators in Australia. We've got many coming online over the next few years. Let's support local.
I love it. Grown here, not flown here.
Oh, God, how good's that?
Yeah, it's my new thing. It's my new thing this year. Grown here,
Love it.
not flown here.
I might get that tattooed on my arm or something.
And that's a wrap. A huge thank you to Sacha La Forgia for joining me and sharing his journey from winemaking to medicinal cannabis. I hope you found this conversation as insightful as I did. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast, leave a 5-star review, or share it with a friend. It really does help spread the word. And don't forget, I want to hear from you. If you've got a fun, thought-provoking, or completely unexpected question you'd love to hear during the rapid fire segment, send it my way. You can reach out via email at AusCannaReviews@gmail.com, or you can send it to me on Instagram. Until we meet again, friends, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to listen. And remember, a fish that keeps its mouth closed can't get caught.